So again, it's me. So we're going down today to talk now on Qurh al-Mabiyat, more in detail. We have talked about it in the previous presentation, but now here, so we just go more into details. So Qurh al-Mabiyat is located in northwestern Arabia, in the midway between Medina and Tabuk, and just 19 kilometers southeast of the city of Alula. So the site itself, it's fairly, let's say, quite large site. So it's 40-hectare site within the walls, and if you can say like 80-hectare site, so around within the fence area. The site has been mentioned in late 19th century, but was also then later surveyed, excavations also made was inside, and mainly by the Heritage Commission, and then also by the department of the King Saud University. And recently, since 2022, an excavation is undertaken by the German Archaeological Institute and funded by Royal Commission of Alula. So the site was mentioned also by several geographers, historians. So the first was al-Istukhri, based on Ibn Hawqal, mentions Qurh as the fourth city in the region, so after Mecca, Medina, and Yamama. Later on, al-Muqaddasi, he mentioned that Qurh is the largest city in al-Hijaz after Mecca, and he described it as Syrian, Egyptian, Iranian, Hijazi town, all in one. And Yaqut al-Hamawi, later on, so in the 13th century, he mentioned that he described it as ruins and that the city was abandoned, so already abandoned during his time. If we go back to al-Muqaddasi and his description of the city, so he says Syrian, Egyptian, Iraqi, Hijaz, and Hijazi, all in one. So how does this can be? So in order to have a response or reply for this, so we'll investigate, look into the materials and see what does the material say. So the method that I used is doing like a qualitative analysis, so to identify the work groups, and quantitative analysis, so to search into the volumes of the imported materials. And I would say that the imported materials are very little in the ceramic corpus that we have. So almost 2% of the materials are imported. And therefore, it's really difficult to identify each group of pottery, so the exact volume. Therefore, I've made three ranges of volumes. So less than 0.5%, I will call it low. Between 0.5% and 1% will be moderate, and more than 1% going to be high. And then, so in-depth observations, looking into the characteristics of the manufacture techniques, the fabric, surface treatment, and decorations, and which led us to the identification of imported materials, and also the reflection on the local materials, which we'll see now. And I would also want to say that only clearly identified groups of imports are discussed here. So we have also, I have some doubts about some imports, so I didn't include it in my analysis. So in the following, I'll just present quickly some of the imported materials that we have found in the ceramic corpus. I would say also again that so far we have like about 42,000 shards uncovered from 4 excavation seasons, and and only 2% are imported. So as we begin here, with the alkaline, so turquoise glazed ware, and alkaline green glazed wares that we know them from southern Iraq, from southwestern Iran, so they were imported in the region. We have very few shards of these jars. Also, opaque white glazed wares have been identified. So with all their variants with blue, with green, with turquoise, with green and black, and all are from imports from Iraq mainly. So based on as I said, the characteristics of the pottery, the clays, the fabrics, Different types of lusterware, so also were remarked and noticed in the materials. So also, so they are the golden lusterware, ruby lusterware, and the polychrome lusterware. And they are mainly of the 9th, 10th, so 9th century and early 10th century materials, and basically coming from Iraq. Other materials also coming from Iraq, so yellow molded glazed ware that we know also parallels in Samora, for example, we know from the 9th century, and others, the turquoise glazed and blue cobalt glazed ware, so also were presented, but in very few quantities. Surprisingly, one honeycomb sherd was found, only one. It was surface material, not stratified, but it was, I would say, very surprising to find honeycomb in al-Mabiyat because it's far away from the origin of its production, which we know it usually is from Mesopotamia, so Iraq, North Syria, Jazeera, North Iraq, southwestern Iran, but not in this part. And it's a large sized jar. And also very, I would say, 1 or 2 sherds of barbutine applied ware were found, which are mainly dated to the 8th century, and very few also eggshells dated between 8, 9, maybe 10th century or early 10th century that were imported all from Iraq. We have also imports from Egypt, and here we see also Egyptian production. So we have like opaque white glazed ware, opaque white also with golden lusterware, and they are a little bit different from the Iraqi production. So based on the fabrics, the clays, and also the luster and forms. Also from Egypt, so splash glazed ware also were presented and very few quantities. So we have parallels in Aswan, in Fustat, so from, say, mid-10th to 11th century, so mid-11th century or late 11th century even. From Syria, very few also. So possibly when we have a very few of incised green or sgraffito pottery, but the brittleware. So brittleware was also kind of surprising to have brittleware in northwestern Arabia, because we know it from Syria, we know it from North Syria. But very few also brittleware were found also in the site. From Iran, we have very few also sherds, I would say, mainly like opaque white glaze, lusterware, so with blue, golden with blue, and green incised wares. And we have was parallels also in Suz from the same period, so 10th, 11th century. Also from Iran, and so we have the incised hashed also sgraffito wares, yellow, and the polychrome sgraffito also that they've been found also in the materials, but they are late dating of the when we come to dates, so their dates are late, not like the previous Iraqi ones, for example. And I have only one sherd, which might be from Uzbekistan or near, let's say, northeastern Iran, so under glazed painted ware. So I would say only one sherd was found, but at least this is also an attestation of relationship with that area. So with Chinese, it's different also. So we have Chinese materials in the ceramic corpus, a large Dusson jar, so green glazed stoneware jars, so almost like a meter in size. It was found on the floor in excavation, so in a stratified context, and also different also ceramic wares also from China, so like Xingware, Shangsha, white porcelain, and so Yu Celadon wares. However, so based on the materials, we know that the ceramic production in China, they are standardized. So, and based on the materials that we have, we know that they have been produced maybe, because we didn't do so our chemical analysis, but based on what we know from publication, based on parallels and comparisons, we know that they are coming from the kilns and the production centers of Xingyu and Changsha and Guangchong. So far, based on our analysis, so 32 ceramic groups, different wares, have been identified in our imports. That's coming from different regions, so from Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and so far away also in Central Asia and also from China. We know that, so we can say that the importation based on maybe they were when coming to Qurh, so they were maybe used mainly the Hajj routes or pilgrimage routes to pass through Qurh al-Mabiyat, going to Medina and Mecca, in addition also to using like in commerce and trade routes either by land or by the sea. And we know also from written sources that so al-Muqaddasi also mentioned, al-Muqaddasi, al-Bakri, they all mentioned the ports of Qurh, so they name it. So like al-Awanid as a port of Qurh, and also al-Hawra mentioned by al-Bakri as ports also of Qurh in the 10th century. So in the analysis, when we tried to see the materials, for example, I started looking at the materials. I saw like white opaque ware. Looking at them, we see they're all white, but they are different clays. At the beginning, it was not so important at the beginning, but later on we saw it as a pattern. So what does it mean? Is it only different clay, the same ware, or it has another indication? We know that from the yellowish fabrics, yellowish clays, buff clays, they are mainly, we know it from Iraq, for example. And so the majority of our white opaque ware, they're coming from Iraq, while the other opaque ware, for example, we see that they are in reddish fabrics. And these fabrics are similar, sometimes identical, to the fabrics of the unglazed materials, which were produced in Qurh al-Mabiyat, based on the pottery kilns that we have found. So, can we talk then here about imported pottery and local-made pottery, so imitation of the pottery? And I tried to see, to follow this pattern and to see where does it go. For example, here, so this is an example of the opaque white with the blue, and also opaque white with the blue, but different in the clay and different in the glaze. So the glaze, the quality of the glaze. So, and this is not only one with 1, 2, 3 shades, it's continuous. So it's really like a pattern. So thanks to the pottery kiln that we have excavated, and so in area B, and we could know then the local material, the local fabrics, and these local fabrics are, I would say, as I said again before now, so they are similar or identical to what we found also in the glazed material. And if we back here, for example, you see. So it's not only the quality of the glaze, but also the difference in the application of glaze. So the materials, the local-made materials, which use the local fabrics, they have the application of glaze. They are not systematic or well applied as we know from the other materials from Iraq or from Egypt, for example. So. And when I followed the pattern, I found that this happens in 6 wares, 6 ceramic wares. So alkaline, turquoise green glaze, and the opaque white with their variants. And surprisingly, they are coming from Iraq. So they are imitating the pottery that comes from Iraq. So to conclude, so far 32 imported wares, so pottery wares has been attested, so in the site, mainly with a majority of Iraqi materials. The stratified materials and the main occupation of the site, so it's dated to the mid-10th to late 11th century. So we don't have stratified deposits, stratified contexts let's say, before the mid-10th century or before 10th century, if we want to make it like largely. And we don't have also 12th century stratified context. So we have phases. Of course, we have materials, but not structures. And for the Iraqi and the Chinese imports, usually what we saw based on the parallels and the comparisons, so we know that they are either contemporaneous to the main occupation of the site, 10th, 11th century, or predate the excavated context. So, and that's because the materials also shows some older pottery that we know it from Iraq, so the barbutine or the polychrome, lusterware, so different materials that we know that was very common in the 9th century, and of course continued in the 10th century, but they're not so common later on. While for the Egyptian and Iranian pottery, they are mainly contemporaneous to the main phase of the occupation of the site. So here, we see it's also here a pattern. So Iraqi and Chinese material, it's more contemporaneous or predating the occupation of the site, and Egyptian and Iranian are contemporaneous to the site, to the period, and very few also, I would say, Chinese. So we don't know why. Maybe for the Iraqi and Chinese material, for their value. So precious materials, precious, nice, beautiful bowl, lusterware bowl. So they keep it in Iraq. Then they bring it when the people they come to Hajj, they bring them with them, or for their function. We know, for example, for dusun jars, the large jars, they were also used as so for packaging, not only for one time, for many times, and also it has also discovered that they were using also to transport also ceramics inside the jars, and also in the case of the Chinese imports, it might be also related to the globalization of commerce, so between the Abbasid Empire, the Abbasid and the Caliphate in general, and with China. And later on with the Egyptian and Iranian, so with the Egyptian, that, as we said, that we notice it in the 10th century onwards, so 10th and 11th century, and that's maybe related to the Fatimid dynasties, so control on the region, because it was also the Fatimids, they dominated also northwestern Arabia, and with Iran, so maybe also it's related to the duties, political and commercial relations with Iran. I said that mainly the importation of the materials were through the pilgrimage and trade routes, which they also were used also by the merchants, so to bring also the Chinese materials. And the Chinese, they were either coming by land, so through the silk, incense road, and also they use also Hajj road when they come to Mecca and Medina, passing through Wadi al-Qura, or through by sea, so as we mentioned that, so through the ports of Al-Awanid and Al-Hawra in the Red Sea. The imports of the southern and southeastern Arabia, they are not well identified in the materials, I would say. This can be maybe related to the location of Qurh al-Mabiyat, that it's located to the north of Medina and Mecca. So the people who are coming from the north, so north region, so Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Iran, they're coming through the Hajj routes and passing through Wadi al-Qura, passing through Qurh and going to Medina and Mecca, while the people coming from Yemen, they will not go to Qurh. So they will just go to Medina from the south. So this might be an explanation. However, yeah, they still need more work on there. And as I said, then a process of imitation of the glazed material was noticed, and mainly for the Iraqi materials, and that's can also, we don't know, it might be also related to the workshops that were that were at that time, so in the early 10th century, trying to imitating the Iraqi materials, and not later on in the late 10th or 11th century to make an imitation of the Egyptians material. And as I said, so the local made material are usually, so the quality of the materials are different than the original ones, especially the glaze qualities. And this might be related to the know-how of the people, so they try to do experiments and to make some attempts, and maybe also it relates to the lack of good glazing oxides from the regions. Thank you.